Sparky Coach Pod, Crowy here with my main man Cam.
What's up, Crowy?
I don't think I've ever,
Relaxing weekend,
I
I
don't think I've
hear.
ever asked you. Do you prefer Cam or Cameron?
Either. Cam, Cameron, Macca, Crackers, I get it all.
Nice. I had a relaxing weekend. Went on a family holiday to Crescent Head. Oh my gosh, stayed in the most amazing house. What a time to be alive. So feeling refreshed, feeling recharged. Just come off our sharpest business owner pod as well. So that was like a 6-part series. Really, really, really well worth your listening time. I feel we're getting lots of good feedback on socials about that, and people messaging us privately. I will highlight the fact we do accept bribes, aka merch. So if you've got merch, we want your merch, your hats, your stubby coolers. Shout outs. Shout out to Jack from Power Play Electrics. Stubby cooler, t-shirt.
Love it.
Getting lots of compliments. Actually, I wore the Power Play shirt the other day to holidays, and then Elodie was like, "That's a cool shirt." She goes, "They make them heaps cooler than they used to, hey." And I'm like, well, maybe mine were just never cool, But whatever. What are you gonna do? So talking today about. I mean, there's lots to talk about seven figures. Let's face it. We did a really funny pod called the 7-inch Sparky, more like a play. I feel like you the 7 and 8 figure sort of conversation far out. Like it's just so it can be so driven by ego or insecurity or a need to be somewhere or comparison. It can be so just, oh, if I get there, then I've made it. And I would say this, if you're in that 7-figure mark, let's say you got a 2 or 3 million revenue and your foundations aren't correct, you don't want to be there. Like there's not a chance in hell you are currently happy. And a lot of the you watch this from a distance now that I'm saying this. A lot of the coaching companies you're basing this fast growth on might have a revenue of 4 mil and an expenditure of 3.6, 3.8, and they might be reliant on having to throw money at ads to stay alive. And I don't necessarily think you want to base the model on what you think you want to base the model on. Like you need to base the model. Everyone's so different. We do a wide variety of people. Our lowest overhead per billable resource per hour is $20 per hour, and our highest is 70. Putting break-even rates literally from $70 to $130 and everywhere in between. So if you don't know your break-even rate, that's a bit of a cause for an alarm bell. That's kind of like not knowing what the the red wire does, or the red pill if you're in the matrix. Like you have to know the foundations. It's kind of like running 1.5 for a power circuit on a 20 amp RCBO. Like you can't do that. There's certain things you can't do. And I think if you can compare your field work to your office work a lot, like you can't just, and I think you brought this up the other day, Cam, you can't just go from that exit light 2 doors down to figuring off a PowerPoint here to 3 doors up to putting a pendant in. The most important job is the one you're at. You stay put. So reference that sort of, take on a job on site. Reference that to the office too. In the office, you can't just go from task to task to task and think that you're going to have a productive day. You do one thing at a time and nail it. But all the 7-figure talk got me thinking, and I had a bit of a moment on holidays. I was just thinking, like, what is a 7-figure business? Like, who cares if it's not profitable? First and foremost, no one cares. I can be sitting at the party and be like, oh, got a 10 mil revenue, and if my expenditure is 10 mil, but just why am I doing it? Is it ego? Is it insecurity, comparison, fear? What is it? It's probably not channeled in knowledge and wisdom. It's probably channeled in something ungodly, you might say. Trade God ungodly. So back to it, like what does it take to get to the 7 figures and 8 figures? And I really think that the lifestyle that most of us want, not saying everyone, because most people don't have, a lot of people don't want to get to that, 10 staff bits and pieces, but guaranteed the lifestyle that you want is probably on the result of some people working for you. So you can go on holidays and the business is still chugging along. You can sort of spend some time on the business and know you're still making money. You can buy your time back, I guess you would say. You can be at the hat parade at 10 o'clock in the daytime. You can be at school pickup, school drop off, or you can work. Like it's not saying you don't have to work. I'm just saying you have choice And that's the goal, that you would have a choice. Do I go to work or not want to go to work? And even the one person bands preaching, oh, I can do this and this, and we can get X amount per day per person. And well, that's cool when you're filling 3 cups a week, you know, when you got to fill 100 hours a week or 200 hours a week, not belittling that, but that's pretty simple, you know, and it's not that much work to get through but when you're filling 500 hours a week and 1,000 hours a week, you do need to expand and diversify your portfolio, your client portfolio, and you can't just have one item and be like, I work on a price book. Cool. Well, you apply that price book to that client who needs a rewire off a scissor lift in a commercial property that's 200 years old. Like, no price book is going to suffice that job. So I think the big thing is, and getting back to what I'm trying to get to, is you need to make sure your foundations are set up properly. I'm not talking about a job management system. I'm not talking about doing a 10-week foundation short course. I'm not talking about anything besides numbers. I'm talking about getting your numbers right and making sure your 3 and 4 figure jobs. I want to get into 5 and 6 figure jobs at another podcast, because I feel like the 5 and 6 figure jobs, the larger the job, the more that could go wrong, you might say. More hours, more problems, just like that song, more money, more problems. You know that song? What a great song. That's a sick song. But less hours, less problems. And just making sure you're nailing those 3 and 4 hour jobs. So great example here. I sat with someone the other day who shall remain nameless, but probably listening to this right now. And if you know who it is, put your window down and scream into the abyss like a goat. Just in howling pain. What you want to do is just, meh, some kind of like goat being, no, whatever. Anyway, talking about, like, we sat with him, and one of the first things we do when people come on is start to measure. And he had 2 jobs at 12% net profit, and the other 2 jobs at -20, -30, maybe, can't remember off the top of my head. And I know what you're thinking. Who would do such a thing? And the answer is everyone. Like, everyone. If you're not measuring, you don't know. And you don't know what you don't know. If you just think everything's going to be okay, it's probably not going to just be okay. So you've got to hack the mainframe. You got to reboot the hard drive and turn some things off that aren't working and turn it back on again, or just throw the whole thing out and get a new one. But coming into this, I was like, okay, it was interesting. We looked at the 12% net profit jobs, and there was 2 of them. And I was like, what was that? Guaranteed that was cost plus. Yes, it was cost plus. Checked his labor rate at 12%. Sweet. Well, your cost plus, you hit an absolute ceiling. There's no denying, there's zero denying, that no one would argue with you can make more money off a price book than cost plus. No one's going to argue that. But guess what the -30 the -21s were?
Price book.
Price book. Yes, 10 points again. So they were price book, because he was just, 2 at 120, sweet, 240. 3 at 450, sweet, this. And if you're not careful, getting caught in a revenue bubble or a sales bubble, I got this much. You see people post stuff all the time on, I want a 15 grand job, I want a 200 grand job. And it was funny, Cam, when we were back in Sydney a couple of weeks ago, and we were walking through Surrey Hills, and I was like, I did that job and this job, and
it was like a tour. It was actually a tour.
This was a tour of my life. But I remember getting to this one spot on Riley Street, like near a substation, and we did this block of, this client we had ripped the top off 10 townhouses in a row and put an extra story on and blew the backs out, and it was pretty typical with this client. We had an amazing job. The job went for ages. It was hyper profitable. And I remember driving up, it is Riley Street, driving on Riley Street, parked. And I remember I was with my 3rd-year apprentice, Nate Dog, shout out to Nate Dog. And I just was on a phone call, I think I won a 150 grand job and a 200 grand job, like about 3 or 350 total, something like that. And I high-fived him, and I was like, yeah, got to work. Anyway, long story short, ended up losing like 50 grand cost price on each of those jobs because I didn't quote them properly because I was rushed. But it was just so interesting to sort of reflect on the whole thing and just be like, okay, sweet. We've got to work out where we're making money. We've got to work out what's working and what's not working. And cost plus, you'll hit a ceiling, but you need that ceiling to be 20 to 25% net profit, where price book, if you're not careful, you can shoot yourself in the foot so badly. But if you're careful and aware and banking the intellectual property, you'll freaking kill it off that. But I have, in fact, done the old Sparky Coach rant, been injected with the rant medicine. And but thoughts, what are you thinking? Because I mean, just coming back to that caring about the 3 and 4 figure jobs, which I feel like we can belittle as business owners.
Mm.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
much.
so I want to circle back to that. We've been to the highs of the highs of, a 150, 200K job you've referenced there, and I'm probably assuming the cost plus job was probably potentially in excess of $500,000 just through the longevity of it all. Uh, that those jobs are generally based off information that you've built up over time of smaller jobs. So I really want to go back and circle back to, I guess, a time in business for everyone. You may be in the time now, you may have been there, you may, I guess, bounce between the two depending on the type of business that you have. And you may still be in amongst it with a really hardcore line of service and maintenance work, and then you may also be dabbling in the project space, in the six figures plus, maybe 7 figures even. And that to not be dismissive of the 3 and 4 figure jobs, because they set a foundation of expectation that you want to set for your own business. They set an expectation of education, understanding, learning. And let me tell you this, you would much rather get a, I guess, break even cost or a net loss on a 3 or 4 figure job than a 6 or 7 figure job, because a 6 or 7 figure style job where you're running in the negatives can be catastrophic to your business. When I say that, I mean that it will send you broke and bankrupt. Whereas a $500 job, if you lose a bit of money on that or run in a negative net profit, you probably you're looking at maybe like it has to be quite catastrophic. That at a max, you're doing it completely for free and you're just flicking them $500 basically. That's sort of the worst, absolute worst case scenario that is probably going to set you up that particular way. So I really want to focus on here when you nail the small job process or small value style job process, it sets you in a process, in a structure, in a routine, however you want to describe it, to go forward that this is the standard that we set. And these are the expectations that we have. And what I mean by that is that I'm not saying, hey, the standard expectation is X amount of net profit. It's the standard and expectation of how you go about getting to that job value, front costing it, and then back costing that. So you're setting an expectation and standard around this is how I operate my business. This is what I expect from everyone. Then in turn you associate expectations and outcomes in a net profit sense of what is expected, and then you can move on from there to then this is what we're now forecasting. So it's a nice flow on, like, I guess it's sort of like a fluid sort of ramp as such that leads to making money. Now, I also want to be really, I guess, strong in my thoughts here around the dismissiveness sometimes that people have of like, oh, it's all right if I lose a bit of money on that small job, like it'll give or take. It'll all come out in the wash, or it's okay. It wasn't that much of a value. I want to talk about the cumulative effect or multiplier effect. That if we're dismissive of the small, we're going to be then surprised by the result of the large. And so, really easy way to have a look at this. If I have $20 per job, 4 jobs a day, for example, if I leave $20 on the table of every job, and that could be really simple through consumables, could be some missed material, could be that our labor rate is a little bit lower than where it should be, or where I would like it to be, so to speak. So $20. If I had $20 on the table, it might be a little bit dismissive. Let's even call it $10, right? Could be like, oh, it's only $10, right? And I'm not saying that you sit there and throw it away and not take it, but $10, $10 a job, just put it across. Let's just go 2 jobs for the day. So that's 2 jobs, that's $20 a day, 5 days of a week. That's now at $100. So then that $100 multiplied across the year is now $5,200. So if I had a briefcase of 5K sitting here, I don't think anyone will be dismissive of that. And I think that's a bit of a mindset that we need to get into, that we don't dismiss the small things across the board, because the small things actually add up to have the biggest effect on it. Another one I can look at here is if we're looking in a project style sense, right? Let's just say that we're still operating in the small figure jobs at the moment here. So let's just say there's $1,000 in material required on a job, right? If I'm able to get 10% better pricing on that job from my suppliers, because I am a bit savvy, or my job management system set up in a way that I can communicate to my suppliers really easily. So it's a nice way to get a request for quotes sent out, and they come back and it's like, hey, we've got an apples for apples approach here from a couple of our suppliers, and we saved ourselves 10%. So we saved ourselves $100 on $1,000 job. Now, if we go to that multiply effect of where the material now on that particular job equaled $500,000, it's that 5% now on that particular job is now $25,000. So again, if I had the $100 note here versus the $25,000 in the briefcase, it's a completely different mindset, but it's how you got there is exactly the same way. Now, the other thing too is I do want to touch on, before I hand back over to Crowy, is that $500 potentially, oh sorry, that $100 on that $1,000 jobs is the multiplier effect. So $1,000 in material, you may end up purchasing a $500,000 a year in total. So we're doing a lot of smaller style jobs, and we get to about $500,000 with our wholesaler for the year, so to speak. We're doing lots of bits and pieces around the place. Now, if you can get that percentage overall on your supplier bills, it's the same result. It's not just on one job, it's across the board for that whole particular year. So I really want to emphasize here is the dismissiveness sometimes around the smaller 3 and 4 figure jobs, and that if you are dismissive towards it, you're going to be setting up a mismanagement mindset or mismanagement culture essentially within your business that will then flow through on every single job.